For context, we're female. When this happened back in mid-February 2020, my friends and I were all 15. This takes place in Italy on a school trip we went on. The trip itself was alright, but being the dumb teenagers we are, we decided to push the boundaries. Our school had booked us into a pretty average hotel, low budget. So one night, two of my friends asked me if I wanted to sneak out with them during the night and go to the nearby beach. I'm generally quite sensible, but they kept persuading me until I finally gave in. We would only get one opportunity to do this right. So we waited until about 1 a.m., messaging each other when to leave our rooms and meet in the corridor. It was only 3 of us. We didn't want anyone else to know as they might snitch on us. The teachers were sleeping in rooms opposite ours, so we had to be so quiet as to not get caught. I can remember still how worried I was that we would be caught and they would ring my parents. But we were successful and snuck our way down to the lobby. For whatever reason, no one was at the front desk, so we hurried through the lobby and out the front door, not waiting around to get caught. None of us actually knew Italian, so this is possibly one of the dumbest things we could have done. We walked for about 2 miles down to the beach. All smug, we had actually managed to pull off our perfectly devised plan. The streets were completely empty. Not surprising considering it was 1 a.m., but it didn't stop that anxious feeling in the back of my mind. I knew what we were doing would get us in so much trouble if we were caught. We had to walk down hundreds of steps in order to actually get to the beach. Plenty of time to reconsider our actions, but we were stupid and kept going. Something I regret now. The beach was really quite beautiful. It was a full moon that night and the beach was lit up in a beautiful soft light. We had the whole place to ourselves. We pissed around for 10 minutes or so and then my friend said they wanted to go in the sea. I was adamant I wasn't going in despite their protests, so they told me to keep an eye on their stuff. We had only brought a few jackets and our phones. They rolled up their trousers and went knee-deep into the sea. I started filming them and taking pictures. The others would be so jealous. I remember thinking, just wait until they see these photos. They spent about 5 minutes splashing around in the cold sea before they came back onto the beach and started stripping off more. I couldn't believe it. They were going to go swimming. They had the genius idea to go in their underwear. I couldn't stop laughing at this point. Looking back at it now, I should have persuaded them not to. I didn't understand the gravity of the situation we would soon be in. They both ran towards the waves and jumped in at the same time, screaming and giggling in the freezing water. I stood on the shore laughing and filming them. Whilst guarding their things, I got this eerie feeling of being watched. I can only put it down to instinct. Naturally, I put my guard up and I looked around. I'm so glad I did because God knows what would have happened if I didn't notice them. 2 men were sitting maybe 30 meters from us in the dark. I can't be sure as I only noticed them for a second before turning back around, but it looked like one of the men was holding his phone up filming us. My stomach dropped. I called both my friends. They must have noticed the tone in my voice was completely shaken despite my best efforts to be discreet. They walked up the sand towards me, dripping wet and freezing cold. I told them 2 men were sitting behind us, watching us. I'd never seen them so scared. That's when the trepidation hit us. No one knew we were here as far as everyone else was concerned. We were fast asleep in our hotel rooms. These men could easily take us down, kidnap us, assault us, murder us. No one would ever know. I whispered to my friends that we needed to leave right now. I told them not to bother getting dressed, just to grab their stuff and leave as inconspicuously as possible. They agreed with no hesitation. At this point, I was really worried. The men must have known that we saw them. Despite our best efforts, nothing could conceal the raw fear we felt and proudly looked too. As we approached the steps, I made a quick glance behind us. A sweat broke out on my forehead. The men were now slowly walking towards us. Fight or flight kicked in and I shouted at my friends to run. Barefoot and soaked, they scrambled up the steps as quickly as they could. We kept pushing. I didn't look behind me for fear of how close they could be. We didn't stop once we reached the stop of the steps and onto the pavement. We were running on pure adrenaline at this point. Our legs burned. I looked down to see both my friends' feet were bloody, but they didn't stop. We didn't stop running until the hotel was in sight. I turned around again and to my relief, I couldn't see the men. We walked through the entrance to the hotel. This time, however, there was a man at the front desk. He started talking in Italian. We didn't understand him, so we kept walking, my friends leaving bloody footprints through the lobby. Once we reached the corridor, we made a mutual vow to never to tell anyone about that night, and we all went back to our rooms. The man at the front desk must have told our teachers that he saw us at 3 a.m. walking through his hotel, leaving bloody footprints everywhere, because that morning I awoke to a loud banging on our door. For the sake of the story, I'll call her Miss Smith. Miss Smith was shouting at everyone, asking who it was that left last night. Of course, everyone was confused, and I didn't dare speak up, neither did my friends. After several speeches made about the severity of our actions and how they were going to find out who it was, I was terrified. My two friends finally spoke up and admitted it was them. Thankfully, they left my name out of it, which I'll forever be grateful for. The teachers were furious, as you can imagine. They received phone calls home and they had to delete all pictures taken that night. I always think back to how that night could have ended, how horribly wrong it could have gone, and despite it being one of the dumbest things I've ever done, I'm glad I decided to go because it terrifies me to think what would have happened to my two friends if I wasn't there to spot those men. This happened 3 nights ago and I am going crazy trying to figure it out. I just moved into a new apartment 1 month ago and I am still unpacking and settling in. I have been using my parents' address as my mailing address, who live a few towns over 20 minutes away, all of my life. 3 nights ago, my parents call me at 2 a.m. freaked out and proceed to tell me the story. Apparently at 1 a.m., someone starts banging on their front door and repeatedly ringing their doorbell. My stepdad walks downstairs and opens the door, leaving the front glass door closed and locked. There was a man standing outside, who looked to be in his 30s with a black hoodie on with the hood pulled up around his face, and he didn't have any distinguishing facial features, facial hair, or tattoos. The only thing my stepdad said was that he looked to be Hispanic. Neither my stepdad or my mother, who was watching the whole thing out a window, recognized the man. The man says, "I'm so sorry to bother you, but I'm looking for my full name." My stepdad plays dumb and says, "Who?" The man proceeds to state my full name again and says that my boyfriend is worried because I didn't come home that night. He claims to be a friend of my boyfriend and tells my stepdad that they are both out looking for me, worried because I didn't show up at home. I don't have a boyfriend. I live by myself with my 3 dogs and haven't been in a relationship in the past 5 or 6 months. Here's the weird part. My stepdad asked the guy what boyfriend he was talking about, and the man tells him the name of the boyfriend I had when I was in 10th grade, nearly 20 years ago. My boyfriend in 10th grade has a very, very unique Italian name. I've never met anyone with a full name even close to his. He says my high school boyfriend's name a few more times to ensure my stepdad heard him and repeats that they are very worried about me and asks if my stepdad is sure I'm not inside. At this point, my stepdad is weirded out and closes and locks the door in his face. The man does not leave. He lingers in front of my parents' house for the next 10 minutes, smoking cigarettes and talking on the phone. Finally, my parents call the cops. About 5 minutes before the cops arrive, the man walks down to the dead end on their block and drives away in a silver car. Stepdad was unable to get the license plate. My parents file a police report and nothing else happens. After I hear this story, I am going nuts over the weird details. How would someone know who I dated nearly 20 years ago? And what would the motive be of making up a story that included that weird detail about my past? I have not had contact with the 10th grade boyfriend in over a decade. Yesterday, I decide to message him on Facebook to see if he has any insight. I tell him the whole story, and he's just as confused as I am, and claims to have no part in it. I am at a loss. I'm also really freaked out that some strange man is going through that much trouble at 1 a.m. to look for me. Any insights or ideas would be greatly appreciated. No, nothing else weird has happened since then. First update. Wow, this really blew up. Thank you so much for all the kind words and precautions that I should take. I want to add something here that a few people commented that might shine some light on this mystery. First off, I am not in any legal trouble and have no reason to think someone would be suing me. I mean, I guess it's always in the realm of possibility that I'm being sued by someone, but I really don't think that's it. Like I previously commented, I had an expired registration ticket that I did not show up to court for, but I believe I got a letter in the mail just asking me to pay a really large fee, so I don't think that's related. I did take a personal loan out. I took it out about 1.5 years ago. It wasn't for anything too crazy and I was really good with making payments on time, until about 6 months ago when I had a medical issue. Currently, I am really behind on payments, but to my knowledge, I have not defaulted on the loan yet. What do you guys think? Is it related? I had absolutely no idea that this is a thing, or I would have included this detail to begin with. Let me know your thoughts. Second update. I have a list of a few things that I'm going to look into tomorrow, based off my own thoughts and based off a ton of valuable feedback I got in here. Thank you. Third update. I'm so sorry it's taken me so long to update. It's a super busy time at work. Unfortunately, there isn't much to report. I called the loan company. They claim to have nothing to do with it. All of my friends and family also noted that the 1 a.m. factor kind of rules that out anyway. Nothing else strange has happened at my parents'. I went there for the first time last night and kept a close eye out for anything, but didn't observe anything out of the norm. So this remains a mystery. I'll be sure to update if something else happens. This happened quite a while ago when I was home alone with just my dog. After all this time, I'm sure what happened was really strange and I have no idea what this man actually wanted. So I was watching TV one night at about 11 p.m. when I heard a car pull up outside and the engine shut off. I figured it was obviously a neighbor, but my nosy dog wanted to have a look and went to the window. He'd kind of messed the blinds up when he went to look, so I got up to fix them. When I did, I noticed a car parked on the street across from my house and my neighbor's house. I couldn't really make out any details, but it looked like the driver was still sitting in the car. I didn't really think anything of it. I got a drink and went back to watching TV. Quite a while had passed since I fixed the blinds, but I'm not sure how long. I'd guess 15 or 20 minutes. Out of nowhere, I thought I heard a tapping at the door. Not a knock, it was much lighter and very quiet. My dog had sat up to look at the door, and I paused the TV when the same tapping then started on the window. I opened the blinds a little and saw a man standing there. I couldn't make out his face properly, and he immediately walked back to the door and started tapping at it again. This doesn't sound very frightening, and I'm not sure why, but I suddenly had a really awful feeling. I felt absolutely terrified and had no idea why. The tapping at the door never stopped, but something in my head was saying, if I opened the door to him, then something really bad would happen. I went upstairs to open a window to ask what he wanted. It felt safer doing this. He said in a really quiet voice he was delivering pizza and told me how much it cost. I felt so stupid for being frightened and told him I didn't order pizza. I guessed he was speaking quietly and knocking lightly so he didn't disturb my neighbors. My dog had followed me upstairs and was letting out the odd growl and bark, which isn't really unusual for him. I was trying to shush him when the man downstairs told me he had the correct address and I better get downstairs now and open the door to pay what I owed and collect my food before it got cold. I was really confused because I most definitely didn't order any food and began telling him that again when I noticed he didn't have a pizza. He wasn't carrying anything at all. I told him again that he had the wrong address and he got really angry. He kept telling me to open the door. He was going between angry and sort of trying to persuade me to go back downstairs. I asked him where the pizza was. He said he had hold of it. It was really dark, but he definitely didn't have anything in his hands. My dog was really making quite a bit of fuss at this point, and the stranger had turned into a broken record. Come downstairs. Open the door. Come downstairs and open the door. All the noise must have alerted my neighbor, who did open his front door. And the man didn't say a word but practically ran across the street to the car that I had heard pull up a while ago. He went back to the car empty-handed. I have no idea what he wanted, but he certainly wasn't a delivery driver. It really freaked me out as well that my dog is quite obviously a large breed, and when the man saw him through the window, he wasn't deterred at all. It seems even stranger and less random that he actually drove to my house as though he'd planned on showing up. I'm a 17-year-old girl and I recently quit my job at a fast food chain after working there for almost 10 months. This story is part of the reason why I did not want to stay much longer. I worked the drive-thru from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. almost every weekend. Seeing regulars was not uncommon for me, and I would even memorize most of their orders and fill it out as soon as I heard their voice. Most were very polite and occasionally tipped, but on one particularly busy day, there was an unfamiliar, weary presence. I had just started my shift, so I was running food to the window. I made eye contact with the man at the window in his car and immediately felt uneasy. I brushed it off because we were busy and I had work to do. Later, once my manager set up my cash drawer, I took over drive-thru orders and payments. There were lots of orders, so I was not paying special attention to specific voices or menu choices, but one caught my attention. It was a low, hesitant voice asking for a sandwich. I give the man the total and he waits in line. He arrives at the window and it's the man from earlier. I assumed he just forgot to order something. Now his car was pretty low to the ground, so he had to extend his arm out to hand me his debit card. As he does this, he mumbles something under his breath, without breaking eye contact with me. "I'm sorry, what was that?" I question. "I said you're looking beautiful today." At this point, I'm super uncomfortable. Not only do I have a boyfriend, but I'm also underage and not at all interested. "Oh, thank you," I say nervously. I handed him the bag of food and quickly shut the window until he drove away. I half-heartedly complained about him to some coworkers, all male, as we usually do with weird customers, but I still had a strange gut feeling. A little while later, when the average wait in our line was about 10 minutes, I hear a familiar voice over the microphone asking for a cup of water. It was low but agitated and forceful. I saw his face through his windshield and walked away from the window so my manager would take care of him. This happened a couple more times that day, asking for straws and other free things. At that point, I was sure that he was just trying to look at me. I was so frustrated with him and the rest of my workday that I went to the bathroom and cried. I usually have pretty thick skin when it comes to this stuff, but I was just so over it. The rest of the night went on and I did not see him again. I thought I'd probably never see him again until my very last shift at the store a few months later. We weren't busy that evening, but it was much later in the day than the first encounter. I did not recognize the voice, but I immediately recognized his face and car. I swallowed my pride and took his payment, trying not to make eye contact. I called my manager and he said that he would give the food out for me. As suspected, the man was back in the drive-thru not long afterwards for a cup of water. This time I knew better. I sent a male coworker to the window to get it for him since I was busy anyway. Once given the water, the man asked my coworker, "You guys close at 11 now, right?" I was so glad I was getting picked up by my mom that night. I was constantly looking out the windows and making sure he wasn't out there waiting for me. Call me paranoid, but I listened to enough true crime to be overly cautious. So to the creepy man in the drive-thru with bloodshot eyes, let's not meet again.